the area of finances, a couple updates and things that we look towards next year. We've talked quite a bit over the last few months about the anticipated state budget for next year. Obviously, with the new governor in place, they've got a little bit more time than they would have had if Strickland was still in place to go through and submit that initial budget. So basically, again, the process works is that the governor will submit his budget next month to the General Assembly. The General Assembly will have it for a couple months. By June, they have to submit a proposal back to the governor. And if they can't come up with something, they have a conference committee, which you might remember from actually 2 years ago almost. It did go to conference committee. It wasn't until about mid-July until they actually come out with that budget. But hopefully we'll know something by June 30th in terms of what we're actually going to see. You hear anything from 5 to 30% state cuts. Right now, what we're looking at in our general fund is about 20% cut. For us, that'd be about $2 million reduction. So that's currently in the forecast. So we'll see where that plays out as these coming months go along. Also, financially, obviously, with the lack of revenues we have, we're looking at a shortfall again for next year. So we're working with the Auditor State's Office and the State Commission here this spring. You probably recall that last summer, fiscal emergency was declared in July. Went through that deficit certification process in the fall. Actually got our money in hand early December. They're hoping to move that process up a little bit this year to actually start the process in the spring, go all the way through that, so that by early July we actually have money in hand. Now, there's been some questions about how much that's actually going to be. Here it depends on who you talk to with the state. You guys change at different times. Last thing we've heard is that there would be money available for the entire fiscal year next year. So as we go along in the process and work with the Auditor State's Office, I'm sure we'll find out more as we go along. But that's kind of the process on the state funding and our loan side. Before I move on to a separate piece, any questions on that?
Real quick, when will we have to, if you're expecting the money by July, when will we have to make a recommendation for how much we need?
Well,
And we have to do that a specific amount, correct?
Probably two different pieces of this. It actually might work a little bit hand in hand, but as you know, in May and October each year, boards are required to submit a 5-year forecast. So May this year, by May 31st, the board has to submit a 5-year forecast. Will include the end of fiscal year 2011 that we're currently in, and then the 4 coming fiscal years. In addition to that, the Auditor State's Office will work off of that forecast, but then they'll go through a full audit process. They'll take the forecast and they'll basically go through line by line, go through their processes of verifying amounts in there. So really what it comes down to is that the Auditor State's Office will be the one making this, in terms of getting the loan, the Auditor State's Office will be the one making the certification to the State Controlling Board to actually get that money. So it'll probably start with our finances, but then actually they will be the ones making that certification and sending that on up to the state to actually get that loan. So their timing, if they start in March, it's probably going to be somewhere in late May that they're going to actually be done with their process. It'll be probably a similar time where we actually, when the board approves the forecast for May as well. So somewhere in that May timeline, in order so they can get it to State Controlling Board in June, have it approved, and actually have cash in July.
I was just saying, because when we did it the last time, it took forever.
For a long time.
And, we will want to have those funds in July. I'm just trying to work backwards.
Right.
When do we have to have that to them? I mean, obviously, they hopefully expedite it, but.
Right. We're hopeful that this time around it'll be a little bit faster process, since they did go, typically on a first time around audit, there's a lot of things that they do to, startup type things you do with any kind of audit, that hopefully they'll have under their belts this time. That'll be more updating as opposed to starting from scratch. So hopefully make the process a little bit faster than it was last fall.
I'll take care of it.
What you have in front of you is the current update on the pay to participate model. There's a few different pages here. The very first page, in a staple packet, is basically the summary page. The other pages are just detail that work off of that page. On that first page, there's what the revenues are at the top, different types of revenue. You got athletic participation, which is basically numbers of kids, gate receipts, other revenues. And down at the bottom, you have the different types of expenses there, salaries, general athletic fund expenses, which would basically be security, officials, basketballs, baseballs, those types of things that are needed. Transportation costs, the athletic overhead costs that were allocated, and then the contingency that was assigned. On the top part of that sheet, again, you can see on the far left side, you have what was projected in the model for this current fiscal year 2011. The second column over is, we're basically 2/3 of the way through the athletic season, so you have fall and winter numbers in there. Third column over is a full year estimate. The final column is actual numbers versus what was projected. So again, that first page is a summary. The other pages are detailed that work off of that. In total, you probably recall last fall we got a brief update on where we were at, how things were coming out. Basically in the fall, we were just looking at revenue numbers, because in the fall it was basically November. Too early to tell in the fiscal year where expenses were going to come out. We had one athletic season of gate revenues and participation, which were two of our biggest variables in terms of expenses, in terms of what the athletic department was going to spend, coaching salaries. A lot of those things were kind of yet to be determined, so we didn't look at expense numbers last fall, primarily looking at revenue numbers. Fast forward to now, we have taken a stab at those expense numbers for the season. Revenue numbers are still coming in quite a bit below projection. However, I guess that would be the bad news. The good news is that the expense numbers are coming even farther below projections. So basically, all that to say the model so far is working and that expenses are being covered. So the good news is that there's not anticipating any additional costs to the general fund, that they pay to participate fees should cover all the expenses, and finish the year with some dollars in the bank to make sure that we're not burdening our general fund from our athletic activities. I can go over as much as you'd like in terms of probably the two main pages that you're interested in are the two loose pages that I passed out. One is gate receipts by sport. And again, we have those for the model. We got for the model from last year. We got the model what was projected for this year. Again, the total gate receipts last year around $97,000. We projected around $75,000 in the model, so it's about a 23% decrease. The next column over is your total estimates year to date. Again, the two seasons we have on here are fall and winter. Basically with spring, with gate receipts, there's very little gate receipts in the spring. Obviously you have baseball, track, softball, those kinds of things where there's really not much gate receipt money coming in. Most of that comes in through football, basketball, those types of things. So right now our gate receipt numbers, as you can see, between the fall and the winter, we're about $84,000 we brought in. We're projecting $75,000, so we're bringing in our revenue numbers are looking pretty good in terms of gate receipts. Sure.
Sometime this week, maybe I just don't have a sheet. If we could get a breakdown of some of this, the expenses.
Okay.
I would be interested in some as well.
The athletic department expenses by team in total.
I don't know how those are broken out, but
So if you go to the, just make sure I got this straight, so if you go to the summary sheet, the general athletic fund expenses, the 48,725, you want to break down the 40 of that number? Make sure I'm looking at this right. On the summary page toward the,
Right, yeah.
that 48,725, is that what you're looking at?
I'm basically looking at all those different subheadings there. I guess I can pick up the transportation and salary from this pay to participate.
Right, yeah.
So,
So you're looking for coaching salaries by sport
yeah,
and just general expenses by sport.
right, so athletic overhead, general athletic fund expenses, I guess that's what I'm looking at, because otherwise, and if we could have something a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that. The general athletic fund expenses, if you go, and this might be more detailed than you want, but if you go in the back of your packet there, that 48,725, it's broken out between high school and junior high. So those real small line by lines. You can see the high school for today, 36,000.
I thought these were a bunch of donations, I'm sorry. Is that what this is? It's just
You in the back of your packet there, the line by lines.
Yes.
Yeah, those are the individual lines. That's the detailed expenses on what that 48,725 is. That 48,000 is broken out between, the high school is like 36,000 and some change. The junior high is 11,860. So those are the individual line by line for that 48,000. On the coaching salaries, it's a little bit small, but it's on that second page, salaries by sport. It's a couple columns over, and I can put this in a different format. That's really the reason I haven't used that model to do budget to actual. It's a little bit busy, it's kind of hard to follow, so I can put it in a different format if you'd like. Briefly on the participation numbers, the other loose leaf page that you have. Looks like this. Again, following the same format, the fall sports are at the top, the winter sports in the middle. This one does have projected numbers for participation for the spring. And essentially, you can see our participation is down quite a bit. The model have projected again a 10% cut in participation. These numbers actually show the participation coming in even lower than that. And that's obviously that's the big driver on revenues coming in lower than projected. So for spring, for fall participation, we were projecting about 335. We actually had 322. For winter participation, we're projecting 173. We actually had 128. And on the bottom in the spring right now, obviously we don't know those numbers yet. But last year we had 130. We had 139 last year. We're projecting 125 in the model. And what I've got on there that I'm using in the summary sheet is actually using 100. So we're projecting 125 in the model. We're projecting 100 in that summary sheet to provide us with a pay to participate fees. So if you look at those numbers on the very bottom of that page where you have the full year projected revenues per the model and the actuals to date, those two numbers, the 412,000 and the 358,000, we'll go back to that front page, the summary sheet page on the participation numbers. So in total, projections on participation, looks like we're going to be below projections by about 54,600, depending on where the spring numbers fall out. But again, the expense numbers coming in as low as they have so far is more than offsetting those low revenue numbers. Any other questions on any of that?
Summarize.
I would like to go over this again after
Certainly.
in the spring.
Feel free to call, email anytime.
I think that, as we had talked, we would see if the model's working at periods of time. If we need to adjust it, then we can adjust it. If we think it works, it works. There's some things that we can do we can do, but there's no way of knowing all that until we get through the spring sports. I can tell you that I think, you can speculate all you want. We've been around this a billion times and don't particularly like dealing with it, but, we have to. That right now, the projected numbers in the spring are pretty decent, which are surprising because, we've lost a few teams here and we're projected to lose a few more teams in its future. We'll need to discuss those here as we, I'm talking about girls basketball didn't have a couple teams, wrestling's not looking good down the road. We've got a lot of people transferring out. And so we just need to keep the numbers. And if you see some discrepancies, let's get them out here, through the coming days, weeks. Maybe we've made some mistakes somewhere. Let's make sure we get them all addressed.
There's a couple things yet in the spring from the athletic department that will still yet to be charged. There's about a $5,000 charge for the athletic trainer. In the past, it had been a donation. This year, it's actually being charged, so that'll be, we'll have to add that fee in. In addition to that, on the turf, a couple years ago, you guys might remember the agreement with the Panther Turf Group where the first $12,000 that's paid to participate fees were being applied to make sure there's money in the foundation to make that turf payment. So there's a couple things coming up in the spring that will also affect those numbers that you have on that summary sheet.
Go a little further in detail, because it reminds me about the
On your summary sheet.
To take
I
additional.
got the
Right,
5,000.
the 5,000, the 12,000, back when the foundation was set up, what, 2.5, 3 years ago now, I guess.
Yeah.
And that agreement with the Panther Turf Committee, that agreement between the board and the committee, the first $12,000 of pay to participate fees at the time were committed to go to the foundation, to make sure there's money in the foundation to make that turf payment.
So we're going to have to take an additional $12,000 off
Right.
of this.
Those are things coming up in the spring that will affect those numbers. Right. So essentially, with the $65,000 contingency, you're probably looking at, again, depending on spring participation and all, there's still some variables in play here, but depending on the way things play out, you're looking at probably dipping into the contingency by roughly $5,000. That $65,000 contingency, depending on how some of these variables play out, it looks like you're probably going to dip into that by about $5,000, that contingency.
And finishing up,
Just want to make sure that we look at our next steps, and I've got it listed, and we've sent you the final copies of this PowerPoint. Obviously, like I said, Thursday, we're really going to hit the Oversight Commission with regards to this is the formula, this is the direction is correct, and getting the state operating standards. And then we're going to move on, getting some input from you guys here in the next couple of weeks to perfect this. Any questions, thoughts, sleepless nights, call. I'm up most of those nights. Continue with the staff realignment, which operations, of course, the board building configuration. So, again, a reminder to everybody, teachers that are here, parents that are here, everybody, things are going to change. I know for a fact that will come down in the spring. You said you were going to offer music all the time. Well, things are going to change. This is what we'd like to see with the current pieces. Things are going to change. We've got to continue to develop and refine our instructional programming at all levels, at all times, through the coming months. Things are going to change. And I gave you a pretty good idea of what we want to try to do. We want to give you some great offerings next year. But things are going to change. Did I get that point across? Develop a relocation plan which consolidates the 4 building configuration. That is the good colonel over here talking. We know that I got to get information to teachers. I know that. I know they're stressed. Our teachers have been put in a very difficult situation. This is a tough time for Mrs. Morgan
and Mainville, and the teachers. We've all been there. 2 other, 3 other, 4 other times. I talked about the level of service that needs your patience. It's going to be different. You know, a week ago Friday, I'll give you an example. Word got back to me with the tune of 25 to 50 phone calls across the district that we were eliminating music at the junior high. Of course, it was news to me. And I'd spent most of my day trying to work through that. We don't have the people. We don't have the people. We need to pass a levy. We need to get this thing taken care of. We're struggling. Our teachers, this administrative team, whatever's left, we'll make the best that we can make it for next year. Can I answer questions today with regards to 8th grade parents asking me what's it going to be like, what should I do? No, I don't know. I don't know how to sustain this. I don't have those. Next year at this time, I'll probably have some answers. And that's how we'll operate going forward, and you have to understand why. We're able, we're in fiscal emergency, guys. We owe $5.8 million in climbing. We've failed 7 times at the ballot. We can't support our schools. It can't happen right now through a vote. We got to keep trying. We don't have people. This will be a first start. That's how I feel. Not going to give up. We're going to provide the very best. I just can't give you all answers beyond next year. Is that fair? Anything else from the board? Do what?
I'll think of it later, I'm sure.
Well, I know we're going to have lots of conversations. Things are going to change. Beyond tonight, just keep that in mind. Okay? That's all I had for information on for communications. Thank you, guys. I know that was a lot.
That's all right.
I know there's a lot of note-taking and a lot of input. And getting lots of input and suggestions, and I appreciate that from our parents. And we're going to come up with
remember
kids.
it.
Yes.
Okay, it's coming back. The Thursday Oversight Commission meeting. To be clear. I mean, this affects everything that we do to make sure that we are at and operating financially at state minimums. Is that what you're telling me that they're going to ask? Or are we doing educationally, or are those 2 different beasts? It's important to know.
That particular formula,
Yes.
I mean, I'm getting the same direction.
I don't know, that's
you guys
what
are.
I'm asking.
But that's the conversations that we'll have and be able to ask them, this is what we're proposing. Under our enrollment that you are using, does that formula indicate that we are operating at state operating standards?
That's what we need.
Exactly. Now, how I use the staff, and again, I'm new at this too. I think, that there's no, Greg pointed it out the other day as we sat down and we're working through things, you would think there would be, here's your state operating manual for work. There is there's nothing like that. It's not listed like that. It's different for everybody. So we've had to work through a lot of things to identify what it meant for little IM. I mentioned that once we get to that piece and we start getting some input, we start tinkering, and we see how the different licensure pieces work out and how the enrollment works out, we may have to change some things. But that's what, tonight I was hoping that you could see. This is what we're going to try to offer. This is what our start times are going to look like. There'll be a lot of, your class sizes are going to be 35 to 1 in high school, projected.
And the reason it's 35 to 1, even though we say it's 25 to 1, is so we can offer electives.
Absolutely.
That is the reason. I just
Absolutely.
want to make
And
sure
now the
people
junior high is
understand
at
that.
30 to 1 so that we could try to offer maximum specials.
Okay.
Are we going to offer AP and honors? We certainly, if we've got the staff, we're going to offer it.
I just want people to understand that that's, when we say we're at 25 to 1, and then they go into a class that has 40 kids, it's important to know why that there are going to be 40 kids in that classroom, so we can have the offerings for the specials and so forth.
I think it's a really good point to finish on. And I'm not going to say, yes, finish me off.
I just want to say, so if we had to determine what state minimums look like for Wyoming. That theoretically, if you arrive at that and the state commission signs off on it, and we go through the year, and we know how much the year costs us, that should be what state standard, minimum standard operating costs would be, theoretically. Right? So
Yeah,
so you get that total number, and you figure out what that millage is, right? And that would be how much it would cost to run this state minimums.
that's correct.
But we can't raise that amount of money with being on the floor. We don't raise that much. Just want to make that point, that it's state,
Everybody understand that?
at state minimums, when we're at the floor, we do not generate enough money. And that
To operate it.
to operate with state minimums. It's an important,
That's why we need a levy.
that's all.
Thank you.
Um,
Well done. I did have one other piece, because I think Mrs. Dunbar brought up a very good point. You know, we may run into situations that may have to be adjusted. For instance, we may run into a bubble area of attendance all the way across the K-12. Let's say that we have a plan, we go into that plan, but on the first 5 days of school that we see we've got 45 kids in one of our core courses. We may have to take an elective away and bring that person back. And so, hey, I signed up for an elective, but I didn't get it, but you promised. Things are going to change. There's a lot of factors with enrollment that we don't know, just so that you understand what we're going into. And a lot of things that we keep talking about as they come up. You know, we're under a lot of pressure. We see a difference in how our kids feel about themselves coming to school right now, under all of this stuff that we all fight about and take it to a vote. Our kids are feeling different. I'm not going to skirt the issue. Our job is, as they come in, we've got to make sure that learning barrier gets knocked out, right? I mean, that's our challenge every day that we come here. Things are different. And they're going to continue to get different as we go through. But we have given our best effort of putting the show out there so that you have something we promised by February. And we'll keep you updated as we go along. Try to get it, once we get it with us, get it up on the website and start having an access to people, okay? Thank you for your time.
All right, community comments on agenda items. All right. Treasurer's report and recommendations?
I'd like to request approval of the financial report for January, with the reconciliation, investments, and the other reports as well.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Dunbar?
Yes.
Mrs. Gray?
Yes.
Mrs. Cummings?
Yes.
Mrs. Black?
Yes.
Mrs. Hammer?
Yes.
Item B, I'd like to request approval of the modification agreements with Plattenberg Associates, that's the auditing firm for the district.
I'll move.
Any discussion?
Basically, this came about because with all the federal stimulus dollars, there's a lot of additional requirements and things that the auditing firm has to do. This is something they worked directly with our state commission rep on, and worked out with her that they were actually initially requesting more than this, but she kind of worked with them and agreed on this with them. So this is something that they were getting. They had initially had a 5-year contract with the district that was signed about 3 years ago. So they called it. So basically, because the federal stimulus money and all those procedures they had to go through were not part of that initial bid, they allowed them to change that midstream.
Well, the fast forward license is fabulous. The
Yeah.
fast forward program itself, so.
That was next. We're looking at the auditor contract.
Oh,
right?
sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah, we'll do that one next, and this one is just the
Roll call.
auditor contract.
Sorry.
Right. Mrs. Grace?
Yes.
Mr. Cummings?
Yes.
Mrs. Black?
Yes.
Mrs. Hammer?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunbar?
Yes.
That was a great lead-in for the
Sorry.
fast forward contract. Fast forward contract is next. Do you want to take a motion?
Yes, please. I'll move.
I'll second.
No discussion.
There we go.
Sorry about that.
No, that's all right. The fast forward contract, this is a one-year contract extension, and you've probably become familiar with it. I think you've used it over the last couple of years. I'm sure the principals or anybody else can be more apt to talk about details of the program than myself, but we have had very good success with it with kids, and it's been a really good addition.
All right, roll call?
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mrs. Black?
Yes.
Mrs. Hamburg?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunbar?
Yes.
Mrs. Grace?
Yes.
5-0. Conclude the draft report.
Okay, superintendent's reports and recommendations.
Did everybody receive the proposed addendum via email today? Okay, and did everybody get a
Hard
copy?
copies here.
So now that I know that, I would ask the board then to approve the personnel items listed under letter A that include the addendum. Thank you, Mr. Beth.
I will move. I'll second. Any discussion? I do have a question.
Okay, question away.
You have an asterisk by the supplemental for Coral.
Yeah,
Is that really?
yeah.
Okay.
Take a play. I'll check on it, yeah. Well, maybe there's some, please.
It's a class.
It's a class.
There's
There's a
a
supplemental
contract.
contract, she gets paid
And they pay fees to be part of
They require.
to do their competition,
For the, do the competition.
not for the class.
Okay, that's what I need to clarify. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, please, mention it, please.
I,
Good.
usually I don't have those answers, but I had that, I double checked on
That's
all of
excellent.
it because I wanted to make sure that we're still, our department chairs are negotiated, so they're still there,
Okay.
and we still fund those as we did.
I just didn't understand, because it was a class, why would pay for it?
Well, they like to compete, yeah.
That just makes
Yeah,
sense.
and
Got it. Okay. Roll call?
it. Mrs. Black?
Yes.
Mrs. Hamburg?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunbar?
Yes.
Mrs. Grace?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
5-0.
Letter B, to ask the board to approve the resolution seeking a waiver to request the delay of all-day, everyday kindergarten for the 2011-12, 2012-13 school year.
Do we all move? Yeah.
I'll move. I'll second. Discussion?
Standard operating procedure.
Roll call?
Mrs. Hamburg?
Yes.
Mrs. Dunbar?
Yes.
Mrs. Grace?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mrs. Black?
Yes.
5-0.
That's all.
New business?
Our Career Center board meeting is Thursday night, same night as the commission meeting, so I will be there.
I'm debating where to put this legislative update, if it's informational items or new business. You want to wait?
Why don't we just, we can just do information and just.
Put it in there?
Yeah.
All right.
I got a couple of things right here, won't take long, just to make sure that we're okay. In your packet, the transportation information is, we're getting ready to send out the plan for next year. I think there's a letter, if you go back and look at your board packet, it says transportation information for the 2011-12 school year. It's a little bit of a change that we are proposing, and I wanted to make sure that you guys can find it and see it. I've got Pam here, and several others that can help explain it. The issue, just so that you understand, is that we've tried to accommodate parents who have multiple locations for pickup and drop-off in the past. The issue might be that some requests come in that we would like to pick us up at home on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, then Tuesday, Thursday, pick up at the daycare, drop off, all of those things. We can't possibly continue that practice. We are very uncomfortable with it. So we're going to be asking parents to designate one location for drop-off Monday through Friday. Just so that we know that. It's going to be a big change, and it's going to cause some heartache out there, because that's a problem for multi-working parents. We understand that. It's not a punishment. This is about safety issues and making sure that we track kids 100% of the time. Is that correct? We need your support. If we're not going to support it, we need to know real quick, and then we'll keep on trying. We're not comfortable. We've lost students. We know they're on buses. If you've ever lost your child for a period of time, I did mine at an amusement park. It's the worst feeling in the world. We're not comfortable with this, and it's going to be a little bit of a change. We want to get out in front of this. I said I would support this, bring this to the board. I think it's fair as long as we are out in front of this and communicating it multiple times to our parents, so they have ample time to plan.
Absolutely.
Feel that? Everybody okay with that?
Communication would be the utmost importance for this one.
It's hard for us to track, and, we're not making excuses. We don't have the people, and we can't afford a tragedy over that piece. The second piece, did you guys get my email with regards to Hawksworth and the blood drive? I think it needs to be celebrated and commended. You have a little bit more information on that, Greg? Do you know, with blood drive? You do, don't you, Alice? Do you have information?
Each year, our school does blood drives. The NHS puts a lot of work into that, our NHS supervisor and our students, and they were recognized, and they have been asked to go to Virginia to be recognized as one of the top sites for our blood drives in terms of donations.
No cost to the district. We're trying to find ways to raise some money. I promise it won't cost the taxpayer anything, but it just goes to show you, this is a tremendous group of kids and a great school district. Sometimes we get caught up with all the negative attention that's drawn to us because we are not passing our levies and we're in debt or in fiscal emergency. I tried to explain this one night. I know I heard it from a community member. We do a lot for the food pantry, and we give a lot through the blood drive, just to name a few. They are constantly, NHS going down and feeding the homeless on Sundays. Just incredible what they do. Fundraisers for cancer, the Heart Association, a lot of the dollars that are really important. The school does more than just educate our students. That is part of educating. That is part of educating our students, giving back to your community, but they have been tremendous. I think it's important that we bring out at least one thing every time we celebrate as we go forward. The other two pieces are policy. In the back, you should have had, as we go through the proper procedures, it is common for you to take a look and get the policies. One's in our acceleration policy, and the other one's for ESL, ELL. I can stay up with your academics. Mrs. Trevathan has been in charge of both of those. Kathy's a good point person for questions. She's a wonderful person. And the procedures are that your homework to get this month, we bring them back once we hear from everybody, and then we'll put them on for adoption. That would be all, Mrs. Dunbar. You can piggyback then on where we're at.
Yeah, do you want me to, should I do this here? Probably information
Yeah,
items.
that's fine.
Basically, Mary Beth and myself have started off talking with legislators because of our recent fiscal position. We find that as a board, it is very important that we continue to talk to the legislators and find out what we can do as a unit, as a board, to help get either funding or laws changed or whatever. I know people seem to have a different opinion as to what we're doing, and I don't necessarily agree with that. So here's a legislative update of this month. Mary Beth and I met with Senator Jones. I'll pass this up. And we discussed basically how some of the bills that were coming down the pike, how they affect our school system and teachers and education funding in general. She emphasized to us that, they are aware of what Little Miami's situation is. It's not something that they haven't heard of before, so that was encouraging. We also had a meeting, I had a meeting with Mr. Bennett and Mr. Bevan and Mr. Donda, with Francis Pompey, who's the COO of ODE, Jeff Jordan, who is the Director of Finance at ODE, Roger Harden, who's the Director of Finance of ODE, and Debbie Terhar, State Board Rep. And they, too, wanted us to know that they are aware of our situation, and they're keeping very close tabs on it. They've met with different groups, put it that way. That I personally had a meeting with Debbie Terhar a couple weeks ago and discussed our situation and shared current laws with her, just to give her some basis to help make decisions, because the State Board of Education does have some authority into what may or may not happen with our district. And I spoke with Representative Mag, Senator Jones, and Roger Harden the other day. Both Representative Mag and Senator Jones were meeting with ODE to discuss Little Miami. I did give them some documentation that regarding our situation and help them with that. Senator Jones and Mr. Mag are writing a letter and penning a letter to the State Board of Education regarding our situation. And Mrs. Hamburg, just yesterday, met with Peter Beck from the district alongside of us, just to open lines of communication regarding basically school district finances. That's basically what we've been doing this past month. What we've realized is, at least my personal realization is, our job is not necessarily, it is to educate the kids and it's to do that, but we also, part of our job is to talk to these legislators to make things happen for our district. And we are not getting answers, and we won't get answers unless we ask the questions. So now they're beginning to talk to us. So we need to continue to ask these questions, because there are people out here who want to know what happens. And that's what we're doing. We are trying to get answers from the state to answer those questions that you all have.
Along with that, one of the things first of all, I really appreciate the time that these people have given us. We sat probably for 2.5 hours with Senator Jones, and she is a very busy lady. I think she's a majority whip. She's on a couple key committees in the Senate, including the controlling board, and so she's very busy, and we appreciated her time. So, but one of the things that you get a sense of when you talk with these people is that they have a huge job, and they can't possibly know all of the laws like at the back of their hand. So part of our job is educating them, and I don't mean to sound condescending to these people at all, but just bringing them up to speed with what our situation is. And, it just takes time. We don't want to go in there with guns blazing, and, it's reaching out to them, trying to establish a relationship, and we don't have much time, but, we would like to take some time to try to get these people familiar with us, and we've started with our local reps because that's the obvious place to start, but we would like to fan out. So last night, for example, I did stop in a meet and greet with Peter Beck, even though he doesn't represent this district. He's certainly familiar with the name of Little Miami, and he sits on some committees that have something to do with changing the laws. He sits on the Appropriations Committee, and our understanding is certain things have to go through certain committees before they even get brought to the floor. This is a very much learning process for us. But one of the things that has come to our attention is that they're meeting with us, they're listening to us, they want to talk to us, and they seem to be very concerned. So I would just like to encourage all of you, no matter where you sit on this, to write a letter or an email or make a phone call to these folks to express your concern. And if you were only going to do this once in your life, now's the time to do it, because we have this very unique opportunity. We are at the forefront of a problem that is going to hit possibly a couple hundred districts in a couple of years. Not that they will be at the point we are, but heading in that direction. And with continued state reductions in school funding, it could get worse than it already looks like on paper. So I think that's one of the reasons that they're so interested in us. There are 600 plus districts, and we're, like I said, we're at the forefront, and they need to get it right. Now, some people believe that, they'll continue to lend us money. Maybe that is true. It is possible, though, that they're going to have to change some laws to allow that to happen. And what we're advocating, basically, is if they need to change some laws, they need to do it quickly, and we need to get in there very fast to tell them what would be appropriate. Do we want them to, and maybe even have some positive suggestions. It would be my hope that we don't want to advocate for something that's just going to let us bleed a little bit longer. And by that I mean extending the loan out, or allowing us to pay it back over 10 years instead of 2. I mean, something significant that could help us and help other districts. Now, I made the point earlier that we're right now at the floor, we can't raise enough money at the floor to operate at state minimums. That makes absolutely no sense. So if the state says you have to operate your school district and all you can afford is at state minimums, then we should be able to, as a school board, levy at least enough taxes to get us to that state minimum level without votes, without, and that would be different. That the millage would probably be different from district to district because property valuation is different. But they need to start acknowledging that, and I can guarantee you that these legislators do not understand across the board. I'm sure that there are some who do understand this, but for the most part, they're in there, they've got term limits, by the time they get up to speed, they're gone. So it's our job to help them understand, because if they're going to be making decisions about education and funding in the next few years, they need to have good information. So, like I said, I would encourage everybody to write a letter, and if you don't know what to write, contact us and we can give you some ideas. But I mean, first and foremost would be to at least give us the wherewithal to provide what they've mandated us to provide, which is state minimums. We can't even do that. So that would be a starting point. But if nothing else, just write and voice your concern, because they are listening. And start out with your local. We've got Ron May and we've got Shannon Jones, and they've been very gracious in listening to us. So I would encourage you to do that.
Any other questions? No? cards here with contact information, if you're interested. There is a typo on here for the senators. It needs to write the Senate in front of it, state of Ohio. So if you're interested, I can give you those for emails or phone calls after the meeting. All right, anything else? Okay, community comments on non-agenda items?
No one signed up.
Wow. All right, we need an executive session for purposes of legal issues, and I'm guessing no action will be taken? Need a motion? I'll let it. Roll call?
Ms. Dunbar?
Yes.
Ms. Grace?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Ms. Black?
Yes.
Ms. Hammer?
Yes.
Going to 403B, I'd just like to acknowledge that it's been total chaos without Helen Taylor.